Hi Jalisa, I created this video for you. Let me go through for loop syntax once again, and then we do a practice. So what is the idea with loops? We want to repeat something. We have program, we have couple of statements, and we want to repeat that statement multiple times. So normally when we talk in English, for example, we can say, hey, repeat this 10 times, right? So we express that we want the certain number of statements to be repeated in certain number of times. So now we need to find a way to express this in Java language. So Java has different type of loop syntax that will help us to establish a repetition, right? So it's going to help us to create a structure to repeat certain statements, one or many statements, whatever you enclose with curly brace, it's going to be repeated in certain amount. So so far we have just used for loop. So I will just explain for loop to you. So for syntax, the key rule is this: we need to first begin with for keyword. We have to have it. Then we open parentheses, and then within this parentheses we will have three sections. This is syntax for Java, for loop in Java. There are different syntaxes, but right now we are learning this one. This is the basic one. We need to know this syntax, and I can say it's pretty much very similar in other programming language as well. So why we have these three sections here? So this is one section, another one, right? The idea is this: so when we want to create a repetition structure, we need some kind of counter, because we need to somehow tell runtime, you need to repeat this 3 times, so it will execute it, so it will keep a counter. Okay, now I'm iteration 1, then we're going to increment it, now I'm iteration 2, iteration 3. So we need some kind of or the runtime needs some counter to make sure it repeats in certain amount. That's why in the first section we call this like initialization section. We declare a counter, any variable, integer variable. Most of the time it doesn't have to be integer, but most of the time it's integer. We declare a variable and we just initialize with a starting value. For example, I can say integer x equal 1, right? I say that I have a counter and I'm starting it with 1, so the first value of x will be 1. Again, as you can see, I'm not using I is just like common practice, but I use x to show you that this can be any name. So this initialization section, this first section, will be only executed once. When it first see for loop and start running for loop, it will see this statement and it will execute, and then it will never come back here. It will never come back to this initialization section. So after this, the process is this: after initialization is done, it will jump to test section. Here I need to have an expression which gives me true or false, because it's going to be my test condition, because it will help the runtime to recognize when it is supposed to exit. So there should be some kind of case when we meet the condition, this loop needs to terminate. So what is the idea? I'm starting with 1, so it's my counter, and I want to repeat 3 times. So x will be the iteration, in the very first iteration, x will be 1, the next x will be 2, next x will be 3. So that's how this will iterate. So I need to make sure x is less than 4, or I need to express this: x should be less than or equal to 3. You can express the same thing in different ways. So let me go with x is less than or equal to 3. So this condition will make sure this loop will continue while x is less than 3 or equal to 3. When x is reach some value greater than 3, it will stop repeating, right? So as you can see, you are setting the repetition, right? You are expressing or you're helping runtime how it's going to count and when it's going to stop, right? So after this true false, if this is the flow of execution, if this condition satisfies, then it will jump to the body part of for loop. So whatever I have in this open and close curly brace, it will execute that. Assume that I have system out, println, I have x. I'm printing the value of x, for example. So after initialization, it will go to the first step, it will do this. So x is now 1, right? We are tracing it. Okay. And then it will, the next thing, it's gonna test the condition. Is x less than 3? Yes, it is true. 1 is less than or equal to 3. Then it will come and execute whatever the statements we have here. Right now I have only 1, so it's gonna only execute that one. What is it? It's gonna print the value of 1. So in the output, you're gonna see 1 first. Okay, then after this, after it finish all the statements here, it will go to increment section, update section. It doesn't have to be increment, but update section. What is the idea here? So here I'm using a counter. It starts with 1, and I want to make sure this is going to be less than or equal to 3, but I need to change it, right? Every iteration, once the iteration is over, I need to change my counter. In this case, for example, the next value of x should be 2, right? Because I want to make sure it's going to be, it will repeat 3 times. X will be 1, x will be 2, x will be 3. So that's why I go with x plus plus, or you can express x equal x plus 1, whatever, you know. I mean, here you can just write this one, for example, or just best practice x plus plus. What does this do? It will increment the value of x by 1. So now x will have value 2. Then what will happen? After this 4, it's going to come back to this test again. So it's going to circulate here. It will repeat. It will be in a loop in this sections. It will test. If it is true, it will repeat the content. Then it will update, etc. So what happens, for example, x incremented, x is 2. So it's going to check, is 2 less than 3? Yes. So it's going to print the value. It will execute the body, and then it will print 2. Then again it will come back to increment and increment by 1. Now x is 3. Is 3 less than or equal to 3? Yes, it's true. Then it's going to come and execute again, and it will print 3. Then x becomes 4. Then 4 less than equal to gives me false. This is not true. Then it's going to exit, right? So then the loop will terminate here. So that's the logic behind, for loop. Again, the idea, we try to find a way to express how many times we want certain statements to be repeated, and we want to express this in Java language, right? So in Java has some fixed number of loop structures. We just learning their rules, right? So that's the idea. I hope that kind of helps, but let me write a code real quick here. For example, I want to print hello 10 times. Then I create int I equal 1. I is less than, let's say, equal to 10. I is I plus plus, right? So because I want to repeat 10 times. I will be 1, then 2. So imagine you have counter, and each time you finish one job, you're advancing it, right? So 1, 2, 3, you're counting. And then you just write system out, let's say hello, right? So when you do that, when I run this, it's going to run this 10 times. So we will have, even you can print the value of I, right? I can just say hello, and I can add, append this I to my text. You will see each value of I. I is 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 10, right? If you don't have this equality here, then the last valid value for I will be 9. When it becomes 10, it's gonna stop. So you will have 1 to 9. If you start with 0, for example, and if you say less than equal to, this will repeat 10 times because it's starting with 0. So you need to count 0, right? So then we will have 10 hellos here. So the initial value, how you write your test, how you're incrementing the counter, it can change my problem. We need to just understand the basic idea here, right? So we should be, whatever for loop we have in front of us, we should be able to execute it. The idea, rule is simple, and the compiler runtime just follow the same rule. They are not smart. They just start with this one first, right? So they create a counter. Then they test if this condition works. If it is, then it will execute this statement, and then come back and increment or change our counter and come back and test again. If it is true, continue. So this will go, repeat until this is false. When this is false, it will just jump line number 10 and it will continue from there, right? So somehow we need to give the loop an exit structure. I hope that helps. Thank you for watching, Jalisa.